Paul Robeson. You know about him?
Yeah, they thought he was a communist
They used that as a way
to stop him.
to get him out of the country.
You always told me about him too.
But
But
me,
he was great at doing multiple shit.
that's what I was telling Keisha, cause I was, Keisha, she liked to hear black men being academic. But I said, Keisha, that nigga was an actor, a singer,
A football player.
all American football player. He didn't just play. He wasn't just a
He
big.
played Othello, didn't he?
He played. That's why I said he was an actor. He played Othello, but it came up because we were talking about.
You see what I got?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the story out before I forget it, though. I seen that out there. That's the Americana, African Americana. But I was telling her when I was in middle school, junior high, what we call, and when we graduated, they took our class to New York on Broadway to see a play that Robeson had starred in years ago. And I started singing the song. Oh man, I said, you know, I said, what's that song? Oh man, river, it keeps on rolling. And I had Keisha laughing and shit. But that's how we started talking about Robeson. I said, I think Paul Robeson was the first black dude to win awards on Broadway.
It's funny because they even got Floyd Patterson. Even though I know he was great, but they got him in Africana.
Yeah.
So how great was
he? Was great when I was young, a young boy. When I was in elementary, about to go to middle school, the night I went to the Shoreham Hotel, that's when I had remember I had the Dennis the Menace picture?
Yeah.
That's the night Sonny Liston knocked his ass out.
Damn.
And Floyd was the black man's hero at that time. We didn't know nothing about a guy like Ali.
Yeah.
And it was kind of sad, but the difference between Ali and Floyd was night and day. Because once I seen Cassius Clay, and I saw how Floyd did it, because Floyd used to make excuses for the white man.
I'm bringing the belt back for all. But look, that because it's a reference book, but Paul Robeson must have been so damn great. Some of these Jones be like one little paragraph. He got.
Let me say something before you tell me.
He got 4 pages.
But can I say something?
Yeah.
I told Keisha, because she, Keisha went to a school that taught things like that because they got acting and all that. And I think she knew of him, but that she didn't really know his accomplishment. And I was telling her, I said, Keisha, you know how they talk about Malcolm and Martin? Like they're the only 2 niggas that ever did anything? I said, I think Paul Robeson was greater than either one of them. He put his life on the line for what he thought was true. In a time that was more dangerous. Because black people weren't all already fighting together as a group. There are many people that's back in Marcus Garvey times and stuff like that.
An African American dramatic actor, singer of spirituals, civil rights activist, and political radical.
That's the communism shit.
Paul Robeson was one of the most gifted men of this century. His
there you go, most gifted. Period. He was smart. His IQ probably was high as shit, and the nigga could fight. Didn't nobody just come up to Paul talking shit.
I don't know this word. His resonant. Resonant.
Resonance.
I
What?
guess his resonant bass and commanding presence made him a world renowned singer and actor and proved equally valuable when he spoke out against bigotry and injustice. By the 1930s, Robeson was active in a wide range of causes, but his radicalism led to a long period of political harassment that culminated in his blacklisting during the McCarthy era. Although he resumed public performances in the late 1950s, this return to active life was brief. In the 1960s, serious health problems sidelined him definitely. Family background and education. Robeson's father, William Drew Robeson, was a North Carolina slave who escaped to freedom at age 15, graduated from college, and entered the ministry. Robeson's mother was Maria Louisa Bastille, a teacher and member of one of Philadelphia's leading black families. The youngest of five children, Robeson was only 6 years old when his mother died. His father set high expectations for his children and sent them to high school in the neighboring town of Somerville, New Jersey, because Princeton's segregated system offered no secondary education for blacks. In 1915, Robeson won a scholarship to Rutgers College, where he excelled academically. Twice named to All American in football, Robeson also laddered in baseball, basketball, and track. He graduated in 1919. 2 years later, while a student at Columbia University Law School, he married Aslande Good, I guess. Stage, concert, and film career. While in law school, Robeson had occasionally taken parts in amateur theatrical productions, leading in 1922 to his first professional roles, a lead in the short-lived Broadway play Taboo, and as a replacement cast member in Eubie Blake. I don't know if you heard of that. Eubie Blake and Noble Sicilies or Sicilies. Noble Sicilies, pioneering all-black musical Shuffle Along. Robeson's career-making opportunity came when he was asked to join the Provincetown Players, an influential Greenwich Village theater company that included the playwright Eugene O'Neill among its three associate directors. In 1924, Robeson appeared in a revival of O'Neill's The Emperor. The Emperor's Jones. That's the name of it. The Emperor's Jones. And premiered in the playwright's All God's Chillum Got Wings. All God's Chillum Got Wings. Chillin'.
Meaning speaking like a slave.
Yeah. Soon Robeson was offered other roles, most notably in 1930 London production of Othello opposite Peggy Ashcroft. In 1932, Broadway revival of Oscar Hammerstein II and Jerome Kern's musical Showboat, which featured Robeson's dramatic rendition of Old Man River.
The old man river.
All that shit. And in a long-running, critically acclaimed 1943 production of Othello on Broadway. Equally significant were Robeson's musical contributions. Robeson and his longtime pianist and arranger Lawrence Brown played a pivotal role in bringing spirituals into the classical music repertoire. Or, yeah, repertory. Robeson's 1925 recital at the Greenwich Village Theater was the first in which a black soloist sang an entire program of spirituals. The concert garnered superlative reviews, propelling Robeson into a new career as a concert singer and inspiring similar recitals by other black artists. Robeson also signed a recording contract with the Victor Talking Machine Company, which released his first recorded spirituals later that same year. Although Robeson would sing a wide range of material, including sentimental popular tunes, work songs, political ballads, and folk music from many different lands, he made his mark as an interpreter of spirituals. During the 1930s, Robeson also emerged as a film star. His first role was in the black director Oscar Michaels, I guess that's how you pronounce that, Oscar Michaels' Body and Soul in 1925. But he was most active on the screen between 1933 and 1942, a period in which he was prominently featured in Hollywood versions of The Emperor Jones and Showboat, Tales of Manhattan, and several British films. Robeson, however, was dissatisfied with his work in motion pictures. He came to believe that, with the exceptions of his roles in Songs of Freedom and The Proud Valley, his characters reflected current racial stereotypes, or what Robeson derided as Stephen Fetchit comics. Did I pronounce that right? You heard of that term?
Stephen
Yeah, Stephen. What's it? What is it?
Fetchit.
Yeah, Stephen Fetchit comets and savages with leopard skin and spear, working in films like Sanders of the River, which sang the praises of British imperialism, became particularly distasteful as Robeson discovered his African heritage. His discovery on Africa. During the 1930s, Robeson made London his primary residence, and it was there, he recalled, that I discovered Africa. In 1933, he undertook the study of several African languages at the University of London. He also took part in the activities sponsored by the West African Students' Union and became acquainted with future African leaders Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya and Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria. Robeson began to stress the positive aspects of African life, African culture. He argued was more spiritual and more grounded in community than that of Europe or white America. Robeson thought it imperative that the thought Robeson thought it imperative that the American born regain their own African roots. He rejected the assimilation then prevalent among the black elite. Instead, he fashioned a worldview that anchored cultural diversity in universal values, among which the most important was faith in human
Solidarity.
solidarity that lay at the heart of his encounter with socialism. Difficulties during the Cold War era. However, as the United States entered the Cold War, Robeson found himself increasingly isolated. Although he was not in fact a member of the Communist Party, he had close ties to many in the party's leadership, and he staunchly defended the Soviet Union despite the 1939 Nazi-Soviet pact and Nikita Khrushchev's 1956 revelations about Joseph Stalin's purges. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, placed Robeson under surveillance as early as 1941 and compiled a massive dossier on his activities. Dossier on his activities. Yet it seems clear that he was targeted as much for his militancy on civil rights issues as for his alleged communism. The real turning point for Robeson came in 1949 when the Associated Press quoted him as saying, "It is unthinkable that American Negroes will go to war on behalf of those who have oppressed us for generations against a country, the Soviet Union, which in one generation has raised our people to the full dignity of mankind. Most Americans were outraged. The House Committee on Un-American Activities announced that it would hold hearings to investigate Robeson's and the loyalty of black Americans. Ultimately, Robeson was silenced, but doing so required the combined efforts of the black establishment, including leaders of the fledgling civil rights movement, white liberals, the entertainment industry, and the government. In 1950, the State Department rescinded Robeson's passport, preventing him from performing or traveling abroad. They wanted him to suffer.
They fucked his money up.
Yeah. What they doing to R. Kelly right now. At home, he found himself blacklisted by Broadway and Hollywood, by concert halls and record companies, radio and television. His only opportunities to perform were at small affairs organizing by dwindling core of radicals and at a few black churches like Harlem's Mother African Methodist Episcopal, that's it, Episcopal Zion Church, whose pastor was Robeson's brother, Reverend Benjamin C. Robeson. Denied a public voice, Robeson struggled mightily to vindicate himself and win back his freedom of travel. In his 1956 testimony before HUAC, Robeson offered a powerful indictment of America's America's continuing racial injustice, but he steadfastly refused to condemn the Soviet Union, to provide the names of American communists, or to answer whether he was a party member, and a question that he viewed as a violation of his constitutional rights. In 1957, after a 7-year delay, the State Department finally granted him a hearing on the revocation of his passport. The result...
That means they took his passport.
Yeah. The result was a 6-hour grilling, but no change in the government's policy. The final years. Robeson fought his lonely battle at great personal cost. In 1955, he began to show the first clear signs of the emotional difficulties, probably bipolar disorder, a condition once known as manic depression, that would eventually halt his public activities. It is ironic that he should pay so dearly for his alleged communism. In truth, what lay at the heart of Robeson's political convictions was not Marxism, so much as empathy for African culture and an identification with common people, the poor and the oppressed. By the end of the decade, the worst years of the Cold War had passed, and Robeson's troubles began to ease. In 1958, he gave his first commercial concert in several years, appearing in Chicago, Portland, and several California cities. He published Here I Stand, a trenchant autobiography written with Lloyd Brown, and a Supreme Court decision once again permitted him to travel abroad. The next few years were busy ones, with American concerts and recording sessions for Vanguard, concert tours of Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, visits to the Soviet Union, and in 1959 another London production of Othello. But on March 27, 1961, Robeson suffered a nervous breakdown and attempted suicide. For the rest of his life, he would struggle with severe depression, and his public appearances would be extremely rare. Robeson dropped out of public awareness and was largely ignored by the leadership of the civil rights movement, except for the militant young leaders of the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, SNCC. At a gala celebration for his 67th birthday, Robeson was deeply moved when keynote speaker John Lewis, when the chairman of SNCC proclaimed, "We of SNCC are Paul Robeson's spiritual children. We too have rejected gradualism and moderation. Robeson's final public appearance was at a 1966 benefit dinner for SNP.
Robeson made a choice. He chose the truth and he paid for it. That's why they talking about he had bipolar and depression, and I bet you he had doctors giving him drugs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when they tell you that, we don't know what actually happened. They can give you drugs that change your minds and how your mind actually operates.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would first told us LSD was a terrible drug, but then years later we found out they was testing people, giving people in prison drugs. They probably gave him, when you usually, some of these places you go out to eat,
Yeah.
they know who you are, and the government, you on an enemy or a hit list,
Yeah.
they put shit in your food.
Mm-hmm.
They fighting a war. He's a victim of war. Plain and simple. I say I need to write a fucking book, and then they'll be sprinkling shit on my food. But that's what they do. If you keep telling the truth about what you see and hear, it'll come to your door. Christ told the truth. It led him straight to the cross. Robeson, in my opinion, was a child of God. He went straight to the cross. He suffered. But that's the price we have to pay to to do God's work, man.
Yeah.
And you can tell that God blessed him. Look at how talented he was, coming from a slave situation, mother dead at a young age. God had to be there in his life. God ain't tell us that we're going to start out great and be great all the way through. Muhammad Ali wasn't even great at the end. But he was a great thinker. He was a man. Fuck that bullshit. He said what he had on his mind. Robeson said what he had on his mind. Just like you saying what you got on your mind. They probably know. You probably in somebody's book some motherfucking way. That's the world we live in, man.